We cannot rely on corporations and private companies and the market to get us the solutions that we need. That was a strategy for the past 50 years. It was disastrous, and it's already led to millions of lives lost in this country and around the world.
The harsh reality of climate change is that we're headed toward a catastrophe if we don't cut global carbon emissions by 7.6% each year for the next decade. More than 200 companies have committed to make the switch to 100% renewable energy or become carbon neutral by 2050 to mitigate the looming danger.
Over the past few months, companies from Amazon to BlackRock to Delta to Microsoft have been setting more and more ambitious climate commitments. These commitments are bold, they're ambitious, they're critical, but unfortunately, they're not enough.
Pledging to go carbon neutral by 2050 is a pledge that was probably viable decades ago, because we've put off climate action for so many years, in large part because of corporations' interests to keep making profits over shifting their business models and towards being renewable and sustainable. We're now at a point where those kinds of pledges are pretty moot. We need a total systemic overhaul.
Big business is responsible for powering the current climate crisis. Just 100 companies are behind 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions since the 1980s.
An abridged history of climate science in relation to American politics is that we've known about the climate crisis for decades. ExxonMobil was one of the first companies to do this sort of state-of-the-art climate science research that really discovered that carbon in the atmosphere as a result of human activity and the production and use of fossil fuels was directly causing global temperatures to rise and putting millions and millions of people's lives at risk. Corporations like ExxonMobil doubled down on their profits and led huge campaigns of doubt and denial that led to the framing of the climate crisis that we've had for the past generation. The window to act is closing by the second.
The 2020 election is going to be a defining election for climate in the US. And the most important thing that individuals across the US, no matter where you live or what political party you're from, is to send leaders to Washington, D.C. that are committed to solving this problem now. We need companies to do one other really important thing, and that's to use their political influence and to call on our leaders in Washington, D.C. to help solve this problem as well.
Despite lofty promises, politicians and companies are still investing and working with the fossil fuel industry. They also donate to politicians who deregulate that industry and defund conservation efforts. Many companies promise to be environmentally friendly, but historically, they've failed to produce meaningful results. The most effective actions will likely come from governments who implement policies to speed up the pace on cutting annual emissions and holding corporations to their promises.
The Green New Deal offers a vision for the future that young people are actually excited about. There's big picture things like a federal jobs guarantee that would guarantee every person in this country a job who wants one, to rebuild our country's infrastructure, to shift our agricultural systems, to overhaul our transportation and energy systems.
Putting a price and limit on carbon that unlocks innovation and creates incentives for us to move further and faster and invest in the breakthroughs needed to tackle this crisis at scale. And they'll send a strong signal to the marketplace that unlocks innovation and investment and helps us tackle this crisis as fast and efficiently as possible.
This fight is about recognizing that the us versus them is not humanity versus the environment, right? It's about the working class versus the people who are really just so bent on protecting themselves. It's about that 1% who are ultimately